Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our meeting of the Cascade Speakeasy Group. Our theme tonight is Fall Harvest. Rob is not with us today, so I'm going to be your sergeant at arms and lead you through the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could all stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
When you're talking, should we like to set up?
We've had a couple of changes tonight, and excuse me, our Toastmaster for the evening is Vicki Chelton. We'll talk about all these changes.
Hello, everyone. It is so great to see everybody in person. This is my first meeting. When I pulled up, I was talking to my son. I said, I haven't been to a Toastmaster meeting in person since March of 2020. So this is very exciting. I'd like to welcome Celia. She was a member of Electric Toasters, but she is thinking that maybe this time might work better. So let's all welcome Celia. All right, and our theme this evening is Fall Harvest. It is that time when the air is getting cooler. I noticed that there's a little frost in the morning when we are getting up and when we're getting our apples and pumpkins. It's just that time, so I look forward to table topics. You've already gone over changes, so at this point, I'm going to call upon our general evaluator, Brian. Okay, there we go.
Good evening, Toastmasters. I'll be the general evaluator tonight and evaluating the meeting as a whole, how it flows, how we stay on time. I have a team to help me, which includes a speech evaluator, Steve Schwind. Steve, please tell us what you'll be evaluating.
Thank you. I'll be evaluating Lloyd Smith tonight. We'll be giving a speech titled Fear Itself. The speech is to be well organized and well supported. I will listen to the speech and make notations as to how the speech strikes me and report to you all at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Only one speech tonight, which brings us to our timer, Fabiola.
Good evening. I will be timing tonight's speech and our table topics as well. And your speech is to be between 4 to 6 minutes.
5 to 7.
5 to 6 minutes?
5 to 7.
5 to 7 minutes.
Here's my notes.
Thank you. I'm sorry. It's the first time I've done this.
These are all the minutes.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So for table topics, I'll show the green card when you're at 1 minute. 1 minute and a half, I'll show yellow. And when you are at 2 minutes, it'll be green. For your formal speech, it'll be at 5 minutes. Your green card will be your 5-minute warning. Your yellow will be your 6-minute warning, and your red will be your 7-minute warning. And I will report this everyone's time at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And our grammarian this evening is Eric Stepper.
Our word of the evening is natant, which means swimming. Doesn't do so.
You can read my scratch.
Here it is in the sentence. There were many natant macrofauna in the salt marsh we were studying.
Where do we hit?
Can you see that, Celia? I don't know.
No.
Yeah, okay. My job as grammarian will be to notice egregious uses of the English language or really philephorous uses of the English language. And I will be keeping track of anybody that says natant And I will mark that too, and I'll give my report when we go to the. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And tonight's off counter is Christina Stepper.
Thank you, Brian. Tonight I will be tracking filler words. Pause, ums, ers. So uses of words like, and you know, as crutch words. I will report when called upon to do so and share all the good news. Everyone's marvelous speaking tonight.
Thank you, Christina.
Sir.
Now I'll turn the meeting over to our Toastmaster, Vicki.
Thank you. A pocket speech is one that's intended to be a pull out of the speaker's pocket when there is a need for a speech to be presented. This evening, Lloyd Smith will present a pocket speech. The topic is one that applies to everyone who's ever stood up in front of an audience to speak. Please welcome Lloyd Smith and Fear Itself.
Thank you, Vicki. One of the least attractive things about public speaking for most people is that feeling that you get when you stand up in front of an audience. And I think most of us in here are familiar with that feeling. And it has a name, acute stress response. It's sometimes called the fight or flight reflex. And it happens in response to nearly anything that's stressful. In fact, it's built into our physiology. There's a reason for that. If you think back to Thog and Ag, the primitive cavemen, they weren't really equipped to survive given the ferocious animals and that sort of thing when they were around. So they had to learn to react very quickly to stress or dangerous situations. And generally speaking, run away from them. There isn't any way that Thag is going to go up against a saber-toothed tiger. Now, it's not likely that any of us are going to face saber-toothed tigers when we are speaking, but that doesn't stop the fight or flight acute stress response from happening. I need to read this because it's got a bunch of technical terms in it, but here's what goes on inside your body when you are speaking. The reaction begins in the amygdala, that's two little almond-shaped regions in your cerebrum, which triggers a neural response in the hypothalamus. The initial reaction is followed by the activation of the pituitary gland and secretion of the hormone ACTH. The adrenal gland is activated almost simultaneously via the sympathetic nervous system and releases the hormone epinephrine. The release of chemical messengers results in the production of the hormone cortisol, which increases blood pressure, blood sugar, and suppresses the immune system. Well, that's kind of interesting, but it doesn't answer the question, what the heck's going on? In other words, this is built in, it's hardwired into us, and you can't suppress it. So that's the bad news. Stage fright is with you to stay. Too bad. Now, what you need to do is to figure out what to do about it. And that partially involves the symptoms. I think all of you are familiar with some of these: acceleration of your heartbeat and breathing, becoming either pale or flushed, or alternating between being pale or flushed. This one is not so pleasant to think about. General effect on the sphincters of your body, constriction of your blood vessels, liberation of metabolic energy sources, meaning like a rush of sugar is what it amounts to, dilation of the blood vessels in your muscles, inhibition, the lacrimal gland, that's your tear duct, your eyes sometimes get dry, and your throat can as well. Dilation of your pupils, auditory exclusion, in other words, the sense that you're not hearing well, your hearing feels tunneled, like you're about to faint. Tunnel vision, which is literally that, where it narrows down. And finally, uncontrollable shaking. I suspect most of us in here have had one or more of those things happen when you stood up to speak. They can be very unpleasant. They can be unpleasant to the extent that some people will, fall over, which is not a good thing. I can think of at least two former members of, or one former member of this club and one former member of the Electric Toasters who were giving public presentations and almost did fall over. They had to grab chairs in front of them to avoid falling down. Now, what can you do about it? Nothing. So thank you. No, seriously, if you did not have that response, you probably should consult with a doctor. Something physiologically wrong with you if you're not responding to that, because you need that response to get out of danger. What you should think about is what people do in other stressful situations other than speaking. For example, consider professional athletes, highly stressful thing to do. But what they do to deal with it is one of three things, and that these apply to our own speaking as well. First, you have to know what you're doing. Now, when it comes to a speech, in other words, you have to know what you're talking about. If you stand up and try to give a speech about some subject you're just not familiar with, you're doomed. I mean, there's no way you're going to fake it. Most people have a pretty good BS detector, and they can tell when the speaker is not knowledgeable. So if you know what you're talking about, you've gone a long way toward removing the stress, obviously, because you know that you're authoritative. The second thing is to be prepared, and what that means is to practice. There is a reason that athletes practice things. They're developing muscle memory, to be sure, but they're also familiarizing themselves with the stressful situation so that when they're in it, it doesn't seem as stressful. They've been through it a bunch of times before during their practices. So the more you practice, the more that you're likely to overcome it. Now, our natural human response is to avoid stressful situations. So if you feel like you're going to faint when you're giving a speech, I'm never going to do that again. Well, you're never going to get better if you do that. You have to do it again. You have to keep pushing forward into it. The third thing you need to do is to think a little bit about what that paragraph of technical stuff said. All of these hormones get released. The key one is epinephrine. Adrenaline is another name for that hormone. And that's what causes the physical, kind of that sense of being on edge. Now, the problem is that's what causes the shaking and everything. That's part of that. If you try to suppress it, if you try to say, I'm not going to shake, you get a grip on the lectern or whatever. The more you try to suppress it, the worse the effect gets. What you have to do is to do something that burns off a little bit of physical, or burns off some of that hormone with some physical activity. One of the easiest ones to do is a kind of exercise that used to be very popular called isometric exercises. And that's where you push against your own body like this, for example, to stretch your muscles and burn off some of the adrenaline. You need to do something like that. If you try to stand stock still and stop the shaking, it'll just get worse. So moving around a little bit helps as well. You don't need to do much. You just need to burn some of it off to take the edge of it off. It's not so easy to, well, let me back up a little bit. One of the reasons why people won't do that is that they feel self-conscious. But unless you do something really dumb, like pull up against the bottom of a desk and rip the top off or something, and yes, I have seen that, that's not going to be a problem. But if you just, can press your hands together or push against the table or something like that, that will help a lot. The point of all of this is this, that reaction is with you to stay. It's hardwired in you. You cannot do anything to get rid of it, but you can adapt to it. And that's one of the reasons Toastmasters exists. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Lloyd. Timer, may we have 1 minute, please? We'll get this figured out. Hello? Oh, I see. This is my first time seeing
There it
an
goes.
owl,
There you
and
are.
I see that it looks like an owl. That's very cool. I see what you guys are talking about. All right, thank you very much. Go ahead and finish up your thoughts. It is my pleasure to introduce our table topics master for this evening, Pat. Woo! So excited. Thank you.
Since our theme tonight was fall harvest, since fall is a season of transition and change, as we certainly have seen in the last 10 days, we had completely summery weather. Then we had a sampling of fall, and parts of today and yesterday seemed like winter, and I think tomorrow is going to be even more so. So I identified questions that have to do with personal change, and to give people a chance to self-evaluate and see what they might do differently. The only kind of activity that I won't be addressing is any kind of latent activity, because swimming ain't gonna get it, y'all. So let me see. Barbara, who do you sometimes compare yourself to? Who do you sometimes compare yourself to?
Thank you, Pat. Who do I sometimes compare myself to? Well, that's a hard one. Thanks for the first tough question. I would like to think that I compare myself to my mother, who raised me to be very independent. She's a very lovely woman. She was an elementary school teacher her entire career. I actually got her job. I was such a shy child in school, in elementary school, that I couldn't actually be in the classroom without her. The only way to get me to go to school was to come with me and volunteer, which turned into a career, a lifetime career. Not following me through school, just to be clear. She's a good person, and she taught me to be a good person. She taught me to love the outdoors. She taught me to respect, my teachers and the people, my mentors, my elders, that I really looked up to. So she's definitely somebody that I do compare myself to. I don't mind comparing myself to, because if I could turn out to be just half of my mom, I would be doing something right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very thoughtful. Vicki, what's the most sensible thing you've ever heard someone say?
Oh.
The question was, what is the most sensible thing I've heard somebody say? Well, that is very difficult, and it's not coming to me. So I'm going to talk about comparison. You asked about comparison. I always think of the quote, "Comparison is the thief of joy," because when we compare ourselves, I've never seen it to where we're equal. We're either above or below. We're never at that equal spot. And so how can we have joy if we know that we're not living up to what we feel should be there? So I'm always trying to not compare myself to others. It can be very difficult because there are some extraordinary people. However, now I look at it as trying to achieve excellence, and that I just keep trying, and as more I learn, the better I will become. And it's just one of those things that I could sit all day long thinking, oh, this person is doing this much better. But if I see what it is that I like in that comparison, maybe I can practice it. And that's one thing I enjoy about Toastmasters, is that speaking has been one of the challenges for me, as many people who first knew me when I started Toastmasters. But the more practice you do, the better you get. And at some point, I feel as though I will reach that excellence.
Thank you, and very appropriate to the theme. Brian, what gets you excited about life?
Thank you. What gets me excited about life is situational. I wake up first thing in the morning on work day and I'm excited to go. I woke up at 3 a.m. today. Couldn't wait to get going. I was done working out at the gym and back home by 6:30 in the morning and at the fire station. I love what I do in this situation. I know I have to go to work. That's what gets me going. If I have something planned, an event, date night, or a vacation, that gets me very excited too. I really enjoy the planning part of going on a trip often as much as actually going on the trip. And I don't know why that is. I can't really explain that. It gets me going as well. And challenging myself. I'm happy to be back to Toastmasters. It has been a long time since I've been here. The practice I get, as Vicki had mentioned, from speaking is wonderful. This week, Lloyd, if I had had some form of pathways written out, I gave 6 half-hour to 1-hour speeches impromptu this week alone at work to 6 different shifts of fire stations. I could have signs. I could really be knocking some things out here. I need somebody to craft the message for me, though. I'm a little bit lazy. Thank you. Did I get a green card yet? At times I made it. That's it.
Excuse me, that's mine.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Let me see. Steve, what life lesson did you learn the hard way?
One of the life lessons I learned was using a little filtering when people start making epithets and references to my colorful past and character. I think one of the big life lessons that I've been slow to grasp is caution. If the bridge looks like it's passable, as I would define it, most others would see it as questionably maintaining an integrity. The result of me climbing out on it results in a latent outcome as I crawl out of the brush or the creek. I took my first dive at the age of about 3 or 4. My mom was telling me it wasn't just once, it was twice. You came around the corner of the house at a full run, hit the step right on the corner, cracked your head wide open. We had to go get a couple of stitches. At 16, I took a dive of about 75 feet off of Mount Index. And at the age of 51, I broke both wrists and my left heel on a rope swing that broke. If it looks like fun, I'm up for it, regardless of the potential for a bad idea. Caution.
Thank you very much. Christina, Do you ask enough questions or do you settle for what you already know?
Do I ask enough questions or settle for what I already know? Depends upon the situation. If we're discussing where I want to go for dinner, I'll stick with what I already know. Unless we have to find out if the place is open or not in this COVID world in which we've been living. There have been times when I didn't ask enough questions in that instance. Got there only to be disappointed because it was closed. Very sad. You get your taste buds all set and you get there close. Should have asked more questions. Sometimes I think I ask too many questions. You could ask my husband about that. I can be a bit of a pest from time to time with all of my questions. That's kind of fun too, especially with grandkids. They have so many whys. It's fun to throw that one back. Why do you think? Stunned silence. I would definitely say it's situational. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. One for you. What would you do differently? Can you hear me?
If you just look.
Okay. What would you do differently if you thought nobody would judge you?
What would I do differently if I thought nobody would judge me? What an excellent question, and thank you for asking. I think what I would do differently is probably I would choose to not aspire to the income level that I aspire to now to support my family. I think if people didn't judge me, I would prefer to maybe live out in the woods or off grid, or maybe in a hunting, gathering type of situation where I would have to fight for my life and provide housing and food and clothing all by way of nature rather than income from a job and then spending money for those items. I think that there might be some judgment if I chose to raise my family that way. But I think it would be very interesting and challenging, and it just sounds like a good time to me. That's what I would choose to do if I wasn't judged.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Fabiola, what can you do today that you were not capable of a year ago? What can you do today that you were not capable of a year ago?
What can I do today that I was not capable of doing a year ago? Okay, so I'm going to share something that I haven't shared a lot because I'm still processing it. But one thing that I can share today that I could not share a year ago was that I am now Dr. Fabiola Barrosa. I got my PhD in July, and it was a very long process. I had many challenges to overcome. I transition from one job to another, so learning the jobs, moving out of town, attempting to relocate my family to another community, and also just barriers with finances, with seeking out resources to assist me. I am a first generation. I'm the first person in my family that has pursued a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD. And I am setting, hopefully, a trend for my family. I do have high expectations of both of my own kids. My daughter has a BA, and I have the expectation of her obtaining a master's. My son is in high school and taking dual credits to earn college credits as well. And he knows he has to go to college. So within my little small bubble, my own family does know that the expectation of an education is high within our household. And so that is something that I could say that I have obtained this year that I did not have.
Congratulations. In what did you get your doctorate?
I got it in leadership and higher education.
Wonderful. Congratulations. That's really, really cool. Eric, if you had to teach something, what would you teach?
Wow, what a wide open question. If I had to teach something, what would I teach? So many things. I would say probably what I would get juice out of is teaching people about wordplay, about poetry, and about writing quotes, and seeing that in unwritten material and just carving it out. It's interesting, once you look for it and see it, how you can see it more often. I think people think it's hard to do or they can't do it, but they don't really try. And that's what I did. I just tried it and I found it very interesting and stimulating and rewarding. When you come up with little kinds of wordplay, you can maybe get somebody to think or you can get somebody to laugh. It's a conversation starter. And I would love to teach that. And I think in teaching that, I think getting better at it. They say that when you teach something that you do become more familiar with it. And I would have to study more to be able to teach it and know what I'm talking about. That's a very interesting question. I'm very, very interested in that I didn't know I was. But
Thank you very much. Thank you. Lloyd, what do we all have in common besides our genes that make us human?
Thank you. That's an interesting question, but I'm going to ignore it because I'm going to answer the question Vicki got ignored, which is what is the wisest thing someone ever said to you? Is that what you asked, Vicki? Something like that.
Yes.
And I can think of numerous ones like, hey, don't touch that, or don't eat that, that I ignored it and lived to regret. But I think the wisest thing I've ever heard, well, I didn't hear him say it because I'm not as old as Mark Twain, despite appearances. But it's probably a Mark Twain quotation where he said, it isn't what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. And if you think about it for a moment, that probably applies to all of your lives. It certainly applies to mine. Nearly every mistake I've made as I've gone along is because I thought I knew more than I actually turned out to know. And that's not a good thing. You can get down some alleys that are hard to get out of when you live according to that. So I think that's probably the wisest thing that I've heard. It's not what you don't know that causes the problems. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so.
Thank you. Thank you. Words of wisdom. Everyone's had the opportunity to give a short speech. Do you want to continue? We still have time.
You have more questions?
Oh, honey, I've got a bunch of them.
Sure.
Okay, well, I'll take volunteers. Who'd like to go first? Okay, Brian, and then, okay, so we'll start with Brian. Brian, what is important enough to go to war over?
Pass.
Okay, I'll let you pass, because Steve volunteered. Steve?
Do I want that question?
I'm not going to withdraw.
Yeah.
Okay, what is important enough to go to war over?
Not a damn thing, except dessert. Nothing like a good meal, and it can only get better when you have a decadent tiramisu or a beautiful piece of lemon meringue pie, and it's the last one, and 2 people are diving on it like a live grenade. You're gonna go after that right there. That's what's going to war over. I'll have that piece, nobody else. I was thinking of the word of the day too, and how tough it is to use it. And I was thinking of the caveman thing. They didn't have anything except caves to live in. Somebody once said, tent? And I think they said, nay, tent.
Oh, mercy. Nothing like playing with words. That was kind of fun. Brian, I'm not going to let you off the hook.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you another question. What is something you know you do differently from other people and the way they do it?
Table topics tonight are Stump the Chump. Playing along. Something I do differently. I guess I can't stop moving. If you notice, I'm rocking in this chair continually. I always seek out the rocking chairs. I have rocking chairs in my house. And because my back hurts so bad, I'm always swaying back and forth, but that helps me to keep moving anyway because I can't stop moving. I think that makes me a little bit different from other people. I have not been diagnosed with ADD or ADHD. I believe I have it. I think it's a strength. I will never go to the doctor and say, do I have this? Because I found it to be a strength. I've been able to do a lot of things in my life. Being the complete average guy, Google the average guy, 5'9", 175 pounds, average athletic ability, average intelligence, that's me. ADD has helped me kick it up a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, let me see. Barbara, what are you most grateful for?
Oh, goodness. What am I most, I think I'm gonna agree. Table topics tonight is Stump the Chump. Okay, what am I most grateful? I'm so grateful for everything. I do also tend to try to wake up in the morning and also say I'm gonna greet the day. I'm gonna be grateful for this new day. I can say that I'm grateful for my family. I can certainly say I'm grateful for my son, who comes and sees me every weekend and hangs out with me still and cooks breakfast with me almost once a week. We have breakfast together. I also live on a big piece of property, so he comes out and helps me around the property as well. So I'm very grateful for my son. I'm also grateful for my friends, my family, my colleagues. So I feel like I should have a glass of champagne. Not yet, right? I'll get some time for a glass of champagne to tell everybody what I'm grateful for. And I'm definitely grateful for all of you guys as well. So helping me get better at speaking.
Thank you.
This is a bad one. Sorry.
All right. I'm going to ask this question of Celia. Celia, what has life taught you recently? What has life taught you recently?
What has life taught me recently? Life has taught me recently, and mostly every day since my son, who is 14 now, was born, is that I don't know a thing about parenting. Sometimes I think I know the right answers or the right thing to do, but more often than not, what I think was right wasn't. Or maybe it should have been done differently or better. Other people say that I'm a good parent, and I appreciate that, but I often question myself, and that's the reason that I think I can do things differently, or I feel that I don't know what I'm doing. So other than that, I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on my life, but parenting has really thrown me for a loop. Thank you.
I have a really tough one. Anybody want to volunteer for it before I draft?
Oh, sure, I'll go.
Okay, all right. Christina, this will be our swan song for this part of our meeting. Would you rather be a worried genius or a joyful simpleton?
Go get him, honey.
A worried genius or a joyful simpleton?
Mm-hmm.
I'll take the joyful simpleton any day of the week. Good thing about being a simpleton, I would think, would be the ability to natantly go through life. Not that I can swim, I can't swim, that's a whole other topic. I don't float. I do plenty of worrying on my own without being a genius. Was that the other option? It would be nice to be more simplistic. I like what you were talking about with being more simplistic, what Celia was talking about. I want to turn around and look at her. Need a picture right there. Being less concerned about, there she is, less concerned about day-to-day things, my list of chores that need to be done, obligations that need to be fulfilled. Sometimes it would be nice to check out for a few days completely. Not look at clocks, not worry about anything. Just get out, enjoy the beautiful place we live, turn off my cell phone. Simplistic. I think I'll do it. That's bad.
I'm going to steal a minute because I brought a joke. You didn't ask for a joke, and you've all done a wonderful job with these. Here's the joke I brought. 6-year-old Angie and her 4-year-old brother Joel were sitting together in church. Joel giggled, sang, and talked out loud. Finally, his big sister had had enough. You are not supposed to talk out loud in church. Why? Who's going to stop me? Joel asked. Angie pointed to the back of the church and said, see those 2 men standing by the door? They're hushers.
Thank you very much, Pat. Yes, I forgot. I was supposed to be good today. I'm glad you had that. That was wonderful. It is now the evaluation portion of our meeting, and it is my privilege to bring up our general evaluator, Brian.
To start off the evaluations, I'll turn it over to Steve to evaluate Lloyd's speech.
Lloyd, it's always a treat to listen to you talk. You have the years of polishing and craft and do it well, starting with the title of your speech, Fear Itself, pretty much has everybody wondering. You introduced the notion of standing in front of people to speak, which is a natural fear in us all that, as you indicated, improves through practice. It's relevant to the group because that's what we're all doing. That's why we're all here. You stated the reality of becoming nervous, our heart rate rising, our breathing increasing. And you took it to the basic beginnings of cavemen with the fight or flight instinct that they possessed. I often wondered how many of those cavemen were a little slow to understand the flight part. Oh, you just bit the dust. I think I'll try flighting. You gave us a detailed and technical explanation of what that was about, how it developed, referring to the amygdala and the elements in our mind that brings us to that place where we're going to either take on the battle or get out of dodge. You read it, which typically we like to work from memory, but given the amount of detail that possessed, you were needing that crutch, if you will, and you handle it well. Your enunciation was clear. You read it smoothly and it wasn't a distraction. And we had a good understanding of it by the time you completed your initial explanation of how and why it all happened. You gave us skills to use and to be able to improve ourselves as speakers, and really gave us a good broad understanding of what it's about and how to get better with dealing with it, including the physical exercises. I thought you spoke rather quickly, and maybe your speaking pace picked up as you were running short of time. I'm not sure of that, but it seemed like you got that kind of hurrying, and I thought maybe that's what you might work on, is pacing a little bit. Also, to challenge yourself is, I think this could be a great humorous speech, and you could have given some pauses and some hesitations to let people laugh, because whether you intended to or not, you struck a funny bone in all of us. Well done speech, a couple of little tidbits to work on, and we're always anxious to hear another one.
And now our timers report. Fabiola.
I enjoyed this job. For our speeches this evening, our main speech given by Lloyd was 7 minutes and 39 seconds. His table topic, he took 1 minute and 18 seconds. Barbara, your first table topic was 1 minute and 26. Your second was 1 minute and 9 seconds. Christina, your first table topic was 1 minute and 44 seconds, and your second was 2 minutes and 9 seconds, excuse me. Eric, 1 minute 26. Vicky, 1 minute 27. Steve, your first one was 1 minute 54, and your second was 54 seconds. Brian, your first one was 1 minute 31, and your second was 1 minute and 12 seconds. Cecilia, 1 minute and 28 seconds was your first one, and 1 minute and 9 seconds was your second one. Mine was 2 minutes and 1 second. And Steve, your evaluation was 3 minutes and 25 seconds.
And now our grammarians report, Eric.
I always appreciate a good mangle. And I always try and mangle it. I challenge myself. And I thought it was mangle proof, but Steve did a good job. Steve said it twice, Pat said it once, Christina said it once. Pat, I like when you said self-evaluate. Steve used the word epitaphs. Cecilia used the words aspire to and off the grid. I found no egregious uses of the English language. Good job by all.
Thank you, Eric. And finally, our op counters report, Christina.
Brian. Good job tonight. Vicki, one Steve, one extra and 3 repetitions. Repetitions were the thing tonight. Brian, 1 repetition. Barbara, and so, and 1 repetition. Lloyd, 4 us, actually, not ums. 1 I mean, 2 you know, and several repetitions. Everybody likes repetitions. Eric, 1 and 2 repetitions. Celia, 1 1 so. Fabiola, a number of us. You might want to listen when the tape comes out and just be aware of where you're sticking those in. That'll help a lot. Being more aware of not sticking them in the future. Great job, though, and congratulations. That's so exciting. Oh, we have a doctor. That's it. Thanks, everybody.
And to evaluate the meeting as a whole, I thought the meeting went really well. Eric, thank you for coming up. Where did you find that word?
Actually, Christine and I do crossword puzzles together, and we take turns, and we almost always solve the ones the other one doesn't have. We have real kind of interesting mesh. We both did not know this word or had ever heard of it. And to me, swimming, wow. So that's what I
Great find. And Pat, thank you for all of the table talks questions. That came in very handy. One of the things I appreciate about the meeting is we already committed to being here for an hour. If we have a lack of speakers, I'm always game to just keep rolling table topics. That's a big part of why I'm here. Lloyd, thank you for always being able to pull a speech out of your pocket. And that was a good one and very relevant. And I would someday like to hear further about why does it cause this physiological response in us? All we're doing is talking to people. Why is that? Everything went on time. Everyone did a great job. Thank you so much. And now I will turn it back over to President Barbara.
It was a great evening, and I'm going to credit my speech. Before I close the meeting out, we do have a couple of announcements to make that.
As Vicki has made it back to a meeting after a long absence. We have a couple of certificates that she has earned in pathways wow, a while back, February of 2020. We have level 1 of visionary communication and level 2 of visionary communication.
Thank you.
Here's one for you to present to avoid having an awkward moment.
I would love to present Lloyd with achieving level 3 in effective coaching. Congratulations. Woo.
You too can have certificates of your very own by becoming involved more in pathways. And these are the, I guess, what would you say, kind of along the line as you finish the paths. PI used to send out really nicely printed certificates. They don't do that anymore. We have to print them ourselves. But okay, that's what it is.
I have one comment to make before I close out the meeting. So going back to meet as the word of the day, I had to look it up to see it used in a sentence. I don't understand where something comes into this. It says she stood rigid, listening with a native, sickening consciousness that something terrible hung at her back. I'm sorry, That's, I'll close the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight.
Thanks,
Welcome, Celia. Bye-bye. So, where did you, Capella University? Yes, and